Welcome to a football show. The season is officially here. That is Zach Lyons, and I am Braden Gall. And there were people on a football field doing football things with football coaches, and that's right, the football itself. Welcome to the show. Oh, Zach, it is so nice to see people doing football things on a football field. How are you, sir?
Doing good. A lot better than some people who put out some videos from practice, and some people just don't know how to caption stuff. People need to know their limits. And A to Z puts out this picture of uh, Will Levis throwing to Chig on an 8-yard hitch. It may not be 8 yards down the field, but like an 8-yard hitch on air, and it's like, chemistry is really building between Will Levis and Chig in training camp this year, and or something crazy like that. And everybody's just like, dude, this is not the video to say that they are building chemistry. It is a normal practice rep, normal throw, and they are just getting destroyed. But at least they're getting engagement.
So football season and our show after the start of training camp, the first one, 8 seconds in, where we should be celebrating the fact that there's excitement, that the Titans have a new administration, a new team, a new coaching staff, some of a new front office, that football season is here. And the first thing you're going to do is be petty. The first thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's
on brand.
Yeah, it's on brand. We've already talked about everything you just listed. We have talked about ad nauseum all off season. So, bring in some pettiness and some. It's just hilarious because everybody is just ragging on them, and it's hilarious. But it's more of an indictment on just how people overreact to every little video and every little thing. So
no, and to your it's funny, to your point, and we're going to play some of this video for you guys because we want you guys to see some of the defensive line drills that I want everyone to sort of see. And I think what's important is to see everybody next to each other, right? It's one thing to post a video of one player. It's important to sort of see all of them. So I've got 3 clips of the defensive line doing some drills. That was where I went and focused right away on Wednesday's practice. I was not out there today. Had some other stuff I had to do, but we're going to talk about the first 2 days of Titans practice. Pads will not be on. It doesn't appear until next Tuesday. They do have another practice, I think, on Saturday, but it'll be basically helmets and walkthrough. So there's lots of stuff to discuss about Wednesday, and certainly today. Discuss about Will Levis, about injury strategy, about Brian Callahan's communication, about DeAndre Hopkins' happiness, about T'Vondre Sweat's shape. We'll get into that. Ryan Stonehouse, the offensive line. There's a million things. The pup list. There's a million things to discuss and to talk about. Of course, we are brought to you by Sinkers Beverages and the Kingston Group. Make sure you check out Sinkers Beverages in East Nashville. I think a 3-time champion of liquor store in Nashville. Sign up for the in-crowd. Great access to bourbon. Great access to the allocations. Make sure you check all them out, and make sure you sign up for the in-crowd. Bluegrass Beverages up in Hendersonville, proud sponsor of football and other F words, of course, and lots of stuff to get to as well. I will say one thing real quickly here. If there's a link in the show notes, if you're listening on the podcast and if you're going to be on YouTube, it'll be up on YouTube. As soon as the show is over, there's going to be a link in the show notes for us to better learn about you all. And it would be very, very helpful if you guys all were to go through, click the link, and answer some questions. We want to get to know you guys better, your habits, what you like, what you don't like, how you like the content, where you like the content, all that kind of stuff. We just want to really dive in and get to know all you guys. And it's going to help us better serve you. So if you could it's less than 5 minutes, all private information, but it's so that we can better understand our audience and better understand where you guys are coming from and what you want. So if you could, make sure you check out that link, give it a click, and answer a few questions for us. So we'd be super grateful and appreciative, and I guarantee you it'll make your experience better based on sort of what topics we want to cover and when do you want to see the show and how do you want to see the show and where can we interact, all that kind of stuff. It's about developing a better relationship with you guys. So make sure you please check out that link and click that link for us and answer a few questions. Along the lines of the captions, though, I even realized it after I did it. I posted the video to T'Vondre Sweat where he gets coaching from Tracy Rocker at the very end. He's one of the last guys going. And I should have said, get some coaching instead of need some coaching. In my brain, it meant absolutely nothing. It meant literally absolutely nothing. He does need a little bit of coaching in this drill. He does get a little bit of coaching in this drill. It doesn't mean anything at all. It's just an example of a guy doing and getting some coaching. One guy's doing the coaching, one guy's getting the coaching. And I could already, as soon as people started sharing it, I was like, fuck, they think this is a negative indictment of T'Vondre Sweat, don't they?
Well, to be honest, it wasn't because if you start diving it, see, this is where you got to take a one step further and dive into the quote tweets and the replies and everything. Because it wasn't about your comment. There was a guy, Tic Tac Titans, who said that he could tell from the body language of Coach Rocker that he was unhappy. The video was from the behind, so I don't know what kind of body language you can really read. And he had body language for every player in the video. And if you look at Ben Arthur, has the front part of the video, and so does Buck. So they were same drill, same clip, same time, moment in time, but they were from the front. You don't really. There's no difference. Like, so
this is a Gruder film of Titans.
It's like your comment didn't even matter. It was, I got to talk shit about Tavondre Sweat, and here's how I'm going to spin it.
No, I agree, but I think even just the difference in words, like, oh, so and so needs some coaching. The need, I think people are not that this is what happened, but just in general, it can be taken in some sort of like commentary way. And I honestly, I didn't mean it at all. I just meant like, oh, he gets some coaching at the end of the thing, and I should have said gets, I guess.
But he does need it too.
No question. I don't think, that's what I thought.
Me,
like,
I don't view the need as a negative connotation, because how many times have we seen rookies go through a drill and get this same kind of coaching every year, all through training camp? That's part of a coach's job, is to actually coach. So that's normal. I guess that's just normal. You get what I'm saying? Like,
that's a wild idea.
And correcting stuff, I know. But everybody has to take it to a certain extreme when it comes to certain players. There are certain polarizing players, and Tavondre Sweat is unfortunately one of them. If you want a big rant from Stoney Keeley, I have it actually loaded up in the StreamYard, but I have it up on Twitter where you can hear his rant about people just kind of like relaxing and not going out of their way to just trash talk a guy that hasn't even played a snap yet.
Oh, how long is it? Should we play it or no?
Yeah. Oh, it's only about a minute 51.
Okay, speaking of Stoney, so before we get crazy, because we're gonna meander through the practice field today on the show. So I'm wearing Stoney's shirt, of course. You know, you can get this in honor of Stoney. I'm wearing this in honor of Stoney for one reason and one reason only. Stoney needs to get that hype machine going. Okay, a hype machine for one man, and one man that only Stoney Keeley has been hyping from the beginning. And I'll tell you more about that later. So there's we'll talk about the offensive line later on in the show, but the hype machine better be up and running for Stoney all over. If
it's about some offensive linemen, we got that covered on yesterday's show, which this clip is from. It's from Football and Other F Words, and we got to the point of the podcast where I'm like, well, it's our time for our weekly 30-minute discussion about Tavondre Sweat that's on every show, and it's the most talked about second-round pick in history. And this is the maddest I've ever seen Stoney, but his 10 on an angry scale is everybody else's 5. He's very zen-like in his anger. So this isn't that angry, but it's angry for Stoney. But this is Stoney talking about the haters of Tavondre Sweat.
I'm fucking sick and tired of it, man. I mean, it is. He's criticized by people that, mind you, to add to what Mike was saying, probably didn't go back and watch a single fucking down of Texas Longhorns football tape from 2023 to see what this guy is capable of. I love Tavondre Sweat. I had him at 36 overall on my big board. If you were a subscriber to Stacking the Inbox, you got the draft guide. You know that. I've loved the guy. I love the attitude. I love the mindset that he has demonstrated in interviews that the Titans have vetted, that they've said publicly, like, we feel confident in the guy. A lot of this feels oddly personal to me. And Zach, you and I and our buddies at the Hot Read podcast were talking about this in the DMs earlier. Like, the interview today seems like a completely different person from the interview that we got from him on draft night in the Zoom call. He seemed like an exuberant, big personality, and now he seems a little guarded. And I don't fucking blame the guy, because people have been talking about nothing but how fat he is, how out of shape he is this whole summer, and it's not fair. And it's from people that, quite frankly, probably don't know fucking ball. So I'm sick and tired of it. I don't want to hear it anymore. He's here. He looks good. I'm ready to see him play and just prove all of the doubters wrong, because I'm in the camp that he can be a great player. I think he can be Defensive Rookie of the Year. He's got the running mate to do it next to Jeffrey Simmons. He's got the ability. A man of his size should not be moving as well as he does. That's the common denominator. You don't have to be some expert to understand that. This guy is a force. So we gotta stop all this. I'm here for it, man. I'm here for the T'Vondre Sweat revenge tour. I'm gonna be right at his side with a switchblade and say, "You point to somebody, T'Vondre. You point to somebody."
Football and other F words, everybody. Brought to you by Bluegrass Beverages. What a homer! What an absolute excuse-making homer, Stoney. Come on with that garbage. No, look, I agree with him on the one major point, which is maybe it's personal, maybe it's what drives clicks. I don't really give a shit. There's just no way to make any definitive statements about anything at any point until, like, Brian Callahan said it today about T'Vondre Sweat. Yeah, he's not in perfect shape. He's going to get into shape because there's lots of players that aren't in perfect shape. They're going to get into shape, but I love everything that I see about him. And until something else shows us something different than that, I mean, I saw a really big dude that can move well that looked like he was playing in his first training camp practice as a rookie NFL player. That's what I saw on Wednesday. Very big, very skilled, very talented, very light on his feet. It was being rotated in and out on the team drills because he wasn't out there at first, and got some reps and looked pretty hard to block, and also looked like he needs to shed a little baby fat because he's a player in his first practice ever as a professional. So I don't like. I understand why Stoney's mad.
Well, it's just ridiculous because it's to a point where it's a very small contingent of people, but it's a vocal minority. I mean, Stillman obviously can fall into this as well because he said he's already given up on T'Vondre. So he declared last night that he's already given up on T'Vondre Sweat. So, like, it's a very small amount of people that really feel this way, because especially if you go look at the interaction we got on Twitter, is like everybody's like pro Stoney, and there's only like one guy out of like 100 that is negative. So
because he's pandering,
I think
Stoney's pandering.
He's pandering, but I think there's a small vocal minority. The problem that me and Stoney have that he echoes is that, like, you could put out any tweet about T'Vondre Sweat and they're going to spin it in a negative way. And they'll go out of their way to find tweets, not even from high profile media people, to talk shit about T'Vondre Sweat. So I think that's where we're at, is like this T'Vondre Sweat stuff has already jumped the shark. But it's also jumped the shark where it's kind of, you could tell, and we talked about this on the show, where everybody asked him like 13 questions about his weight and his diet, and, are you vegetarian? What are you doing? In that press conference that was a few months ago. And you could already tell, is like, these people don't care about me, the player. They care about me, the person. And yes, you are supposed to see players as people, right? I mean, you're not supposed to see them as objects, but there's just something too where a dude just wants to come and play football, and he's already lost 30 something fucking pounds. And it's going to be hard to get from I think it's going to be harder from going from 390 to 365. That's not as hard as going from 365 to 345. Like, that's going to be harder. Those last 10 pounds are going to be harder than the first 30 pounds.
QC says, what's been the bigger story leading up to the respective season? One, Sweat's weight or Spears' knee?
I think Sweat's weight has been way bigger.
And it's a funny question. Here, what's ironic is this season there's even more important knee that's already taking a conversation, and he plays corner. It's not his first year in the NFL, obviously, but there's another knee that's more talked about already in camp than Spears' knee, which is, I hope last year did away with a lot of the concerns about that, which honestly is a perfect example of this conversation. Like, we try to tell people all summer, like, look, maybe this affects Tyjae Spears' long-term career. Maybe he's an 8-year veteran instead of a 10-year veteran. We have no idea. None of us are medical professionals or doctors, but that he's ready to go and he's totally fine now. And guess what happened in the regular season? He played exactly the way everyone expected him to play, who drafted him to be that player. And that's a perfect example of, like, now we could also go the other way, and we can say, well, there was a wide receiver first-round pick out of Arkansas that had some problems in camp. And it turned out those problems
even put together back-to-back practices his rookie year at training camp? Like, it took a while to get there. At least Sweat's one up on him right now. He's got 2 back-to-backs.
That's true. And ultimately, my point is that it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. And I think it's only time that's going to matter on this. We're just not going to know. So my first instinct on Wednesday when I first got out there and they first got into to drills, number one, and we're going to meander today. Sinkers Beverages, Kingston Group, go check it out. What I think is interesting is that I thought JC Latham looked like just slightly more tuned up, like a couple of pounds of baby fat was gone, maybe a little bit more muscular, but not as wide or big or whatever. But maybe that's just my eyeballs. And Sweat looked a little bit slightly bigger, but it's such a small memory from OTAs because we got the one day at the very beginning.
Yeah.
So it's hard to tell. And he was huffing and puffing after a few drills, but like he's a huge dude and everyone was huffing and puffing because it was hot as hell, super humid, and the first day of practice. And so I don't think there's any reason to overreact to anything. Like I know Brian Callahan, for example, today, very upset with the way the offense put the ball on the ground, especially on Wednesday. And he was clearly visibly upset about that. And then he kind of turned around and said, but you know what? If the defense is going to keep making plays like that, that's one way I get to look at it too. So even in the moment where
coach, that was a really good statement like that. As a head coach, I'm pretty proud of the defense.
but it's an example of how even inside of one man's brain, you can see the perspectives and sort of be like, look, I'm upset about this. We need to correct it. It's worth talking about, but it's also not that big of a deal because, hey, it means something else over here. So Sweat it's worth monitoring. It is worth talking about. It is not worth being overreactionary or getting upset or getting it. Certainly, like to your point about what happened after my tweet, like I'm not in the comment section anymore. I just am not. Twitter is like a Nazi honky tonk, and it's not my vibe anymore. So I post and then I get the fuck out of there. So I like hanging out with you guys in the comment section of this show. You guys are way more fun. Comment section of F words. Kaharski, the rest of you guys are way more fun over here than Twitter ever has been. So, should we even play the clips of T'Vondre Sweat? Like, should we even?
I mean, I think they're worth playing. I just want to say this about. Well, let's play the clip and then I can talk about T'Vondre Sweat after.
All right, here's a couple of videos. If you did not see them on Twitter, here's a couple of videos that I shot on Wednesday's practice of T'Vondre Sweat and the entire defensive line, so you can get a sense of how big he is, how quick he is, but also get a sense of the other guys: Sebastian Joseph Day, Jeffrey Simmons, and a variety of other players. These are 3 drills by the defensive line on Wednesday's first practice.
And if you're listening via podcast, it's 1:53. So if you just want to skip ahead and not hear the sights and
I'll just cut that out.
Birds chirping and the winds blowing, it's 1:53 seconds.
Let's go! Hand up, put your foot out the fucking dirt, dude. 180! 180, go! You got to rip the ball now, you turn your whole hand in there. Why can't we rip out
Set!
right
Let's go!
Back to the top. There we go, big guy. Nice. That's it. Get up. And you go look at what you do. Your head up, don't follow that damn round. Stop right there, stop blocking. Down to the throat, down to the throat.
So there you go. Welcome back, podcast audience. There you go. So I just want to show you guys that. I think there's some good context there. First of all, it's very hard to make Jeffrey Simmons look small. And somehow T'Vondre Sweat makes Jeffrey Simmons look small.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because Tavondre Sweat was on a podcast, and we talk about this podcast on Football and Other F Words. It's a disaster of an hour and 40 minutes. It's one of the worst produced podcasts I've ever seen. It was just chaos. Great video. They had good sound, but they only had 3 mics, and there was 8 people, and people were showing up in the middle of the podcast. It was one of his friends' podcasts where in Texas, where he did the youth football camp. So he kind of went on as a fun aside and stuff like that. And it was an hour and 40 minutes, and it was chaos because I was just looking for stuff that, may matter. I want to hear where he's at and stuff like that if they ask him, but they end up talking about video games, college atmospheres and stuff like that. So there's only a little bit of it. One of the things that I noticed in the clip is that he's not wearing long sleeves, and he said that he would definitely be wearing long sleeves when he practices. So I guess that Tennessee humidity is a little bit
Full of
different.
lies. Full of lies.
Full of lies there. But he said that he's been hanging out with DeAndre Hopkins a lot in the offseason. So that's where maybe the comfortability of talking shit came from with D-Hop. And of course, I guess the defense instigated it anyway. And D-Hop's apparently a talker. But he said the biggest difference, and you're a college guy, and we've talked about this a while, but he said the biggest difference is there is no hand-holding like in the pros like there is in college. Like, I am on my own. I am in the deep end. And he says that's a big, stark difference, because they asked him what's been the toughest adjustment from going college to pros, and that's been his toughest adjustment. Now, it looks like for a guy that says that was his toughest adjustment, to me, if he added a pound or two, I couldn't tell from the videos. He looked very close to the 365 that we've kind of seen him at. But that's a good sign, right? Because, I mean, that's a long break. He could have came in way heavier, way more out of shape. He maybe wouldn't have been ready and passed the conditioning test, which we detail what the conditioning test is for the Ravens and what it may likely look like for the Tennessee Titans on Football and Other F Words, which is very difficult. I'd love to see the media try to do it because I don't think I could do it.
I would love to see the media do everything.
It would be fun. You should pass a conditioning test before you can go out to training camp. That would be hilarious.
No,
you cannot come cover training camp.
No, Titans fans would have no coverage of their team. It'd be like this is going to be terrible. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. It's like me, Austin, and Sam Phelan.
But what was the most interesting, and we talked about this in Football and Other F Words, and I want to get your opinion on it. Do you care? Before I get into it, do you care where the motivation comes from for a player to be great, as long as he has motivation to be great?
No. I mean, Aaron Rodgers said this, but like he said the quiet part out loud about contracts. Like we always talk about NHL, NBA, baseball, doesn't matter, football. Oh, he's in a contract year. You're going to get the best out of him. It's like, well, of course money motivates people. What the hell are we talking about? Like, of course it is. Like if it's about proving people wrong, some people self-motivate that way. If it's about winning a championship because you want to be great, I tend to believe that type of motivation is like the purest, if that's a thing, right? But self-serving motivation versus championship motivation a lot of times overlap and are exactly the same concentric circle. So not really. Like, I don't really care where it comes from. As long as you bust your ass and you're out there working hard, that's all that matters, I guess.
And I don't either. So his motivation is as clear as day on this podcast. I mean, it is downright infiltrated who he's going to vote for in this upcoming election, if this is going to tell you anything. And I'm not going to, he says it. He says the name and he does it all. But he says, I'm doing what's best for my pocketbook in the upcoming election. And all he cares about is getting the second contract. He cares about making money. And I think the Tennessee Titans realized that after their first meeting, because was one of the first things Brian Callahan said in the press conference after they drafted him that they emphasized with Tavondre Sweat. And that is not being in shape and being overweight can cost you a lot of money in your pocketbook. It can cost you a lot of money. And he is money driven. Now, he does have goals that are related to football outside of money, like he wants to be Defensive Rookie of the Year. He specifically says, I want to be Defensive Rookie of the Year. And he wants to play in the league for 10 years, like a minimum of 10 years.
He's going to need some really he's going to need some really good healthcare coverage after that. So I would take that into consideration when voting, but just the thought,
Yeah, but I didn't say that to get political.
No,
so,
I know. I'm just fucking around. I don't give a shit who people
but-
vote for. I just be
yeah.
educated when you vote.
Well, that's all he cares about is money. He doesn't care about anything else. And I think I say that to say it's kind of like how I view Will Levis. Okay. He's not going to fail or succeed, or he's not going to fail because he didn't try. And I think a lot of people think T'Vondre Sweat doesn't have motivation or doesn't have care. He wants to be great. He wants to be good. He wants to make a lot of money. All that stuff matters. And Will Levis is probably more of I have to be the best because he's an alpha kind of mentality and everything. Yeah. And T'Vondre Sweat has a little bit of it, but it's mainly driven by money. And I think I don't know if T'Vondre Sweat's going to be good or not. But I can tell you one thing, it's not going to be because he's lazy. I do not think that T'Vondre Sweat is lazy, and I think he understands, and it's been made clear to him, at least over the last year at Texas and this offseason, that he's motivated by money. And he knows that if he wants to get in shape,
I got no problem with
that second contract, he's going to have to stay in shape. So I just want to throw that out there. And also these practice videos, this kind of popped up with Traylon Burks during the OTAs or mini camp, one of the pajama practices. And people were like, well, we should cut. There's a guy that Trevor Match who said, like, I would cut him after what he did, how he did the drills or whatever. And I was
standing next to him, by the way, when he was watching Traylon Burks do that, and he was kind of like saying things. And Trevor's he's a perfectly fine guy, I guess, but I don't. Yeah, he's more of a college guy.
Right. Tyke Tolbert then had to say, well, not everybody is coached up to do the drills the same way. Some people take them slower on purpose because they're doing other stuff later on. So we don't know what they asked of T'Vondre Sweat. Did they ask him to go full speed? Did they ask him to take it slow because they played it really safe with the injury and they kind of want to ease him into practice? That's stuff that we don't know. And even you at the practice don't know without asking Tracy Rocker, who, by the way, could he go a little bit slower getting over T'Vondre Sweat? I mean, my God, no pep in his step.
Like, how can you discuss Tracy Rocker's body language without like saying, why'd you make him wait so long for the coaching?
He's just like,
no, I
feel like there should be a theme song of like whatever plays when Eeyore's walking around.
Being motivated by money is like 99% of all humanity. Like, I don't think that's there's not a weird or negative thing to be said about anybody being motivated by financial means. Like,
but there's those people that are like, oh, he should probably be motivated by the love of the game. You know what I'm saying?
I think he needs to study tax rates before he tells us who he thinks is going to be better for his pocketbook and investment in the rest of society. But that's neither here nor there in a different podcast altogether. Pod Bless Nashville, if you want to go check that out. All right, so quickly here, let's get into the rest of the defense because I do think we saw. On the first day of practice, we saw Awuzie. I think we saw what is going to be the starting back seven. And it is who you expect it to be. And it was good to see Snead out there for the first time. Of course, we know who the safeties are. We know who the three corners are going to be. They're all out there. Linebacking core was interesting. Still,
I've heard my Titans media sparrows have told me that Cedric Gray has not had 2 good days. They've been pretty bad.
I'm not sure if he's had 2 good reps.
There you go.
Like, it's he just wasn't relevant on day one. Again, I was not out there today, so I don't know. But he was not a relevant factor. Now, is that because he's like, I tried to find him on the sidelines too, because a lot of times, like, Sweat's not in there. You're like, all right, where's Sweat? Is he standing next to Rocker on the sideline? Is he talking coaching? Is he talking through something? Because that's just as important as out there getting a rep. If you're on the sideline kind of being able to learn in real time, like, I could totally understand a coach saying, no, I needed him to come over here after that play and let's talk about what happened and then get back out there and fix the problem or whatever. So I think it's, doctor, the good doctor is still around. And then the next two, like, it was not who I expected it to be either. So or I guess I should here. How about this? This might be the theme of the entire first 2 days. Everything we saw at OTAs is what we saw on the first 2 days of practice. So whether it's the starting offensive line, whether it's the 3 receivers, I mean, there's some stuff that's more predictable than others. Whether it was tight end rotation, running back rotation, secondary, linebacker, you name it, sort of what we saw in OTAs is that has continued. So you could do with that information what you will about the right tackle and right guard. You can do with that information what you will about middle linebacker. You can do with that information what you will about returners, kick and punt returners as well. We did not see any kick return or kick coverage on the first day of practice. We did see Ryan Stonehouse. We can get to that in a second. But I think what we saw in OTAs and minicamp is what we've seen so far in 2 days in terms of the lineup. So,
well, let me ask you this on the Cedric Gray front. I mean, I've been a big proponent of he needs reps and he needs to get in there and they need to suck it up because this is the mess that they created and give him all the reps, all the shots with the first team. And that's what they need to do throughout the regular season. Is his play that bad that you couldn't entertain that still?
No, but it's almost also related to what the other guys are doing. I will say this: I think Murray, and he talked a little bit about it today,
he was talking glowingly about Murray.
Brian Callahan raved about Kenneth Murray today, sort of like how quick he is, how fast he is, his reaction stuff. It's all the stuff that I saw at Oklahoma and did not see as a Charger. Frankly, I really liked him coming out of the draft, and I didn't like his career so far, which is why you didn't like the signing. Murray has been, I think, by far the best linebacker from an athleticism and get to see ball, get ball, go to the place, read the play. He's been by far the best. He's been in the hole a lot of times where he's supposed to be when they get to team drills. But again, like it's so hard to know if somebody got pushed out of the way when you're not wearing pads. Like it's hard. Here's the thing. I never see anything from Jack Gibbons, Chance Campbell, Garrett. Why am I drawing a blank on the other guy?
Wallow.
Wallow.
He can flat out play. Apparently, is what
I never see anything from any of these players that differentiates themselves from somebody else. And maybe it's just that Jack Gibbons knows where to line up every single time. Maybe he just knows the ball better pre-snap or knows where it's going to go. I don't know, but I don't see anything dramatic that separates any of them. And that maybe that's the major problem, or maybe that means they've got a lot of good options. I don't know, but there's not been anything where I was like, oh, that was him and Gibbons and Wiley got into little shit talking, which was fun because the defense is much louder with Denard Wilson, I think, calling plays, especially with Chris Harris, like continuing that from last year. But there's not anything it's hard to explain. They're all the same person.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. So basically, if you just threw Cedric Gray out there, it's just like throwing Jack Gibbons out there. It's just like throwing Otis Reese out there. It's just like throwing Chance Campbell out there. They're all just the same. No matter who you put next to Kenneth Murray, currently is not ready to see meaningful NFL action, but that's what you have to deal with.
I think, yeah, which is very hopeful and optimistic.
Then to me, then just give it all to Cedric Gray. That's just where I've been at and where I'm at, and I'll just maintain that. As willing to be a little bit more open. But at this point, he doesn't have to wear the green dot. I don't care about the green dot anymore. Just fuck it. Just fuck the green dot.
No.
At some point, he just needs to be the guy, and they just need to let him learn trial by fire. That's just how I feel about him.
I tend to agree. My assumption is that Jack Gibbons, pre-snap reads and lineup is just way ahead of where he is mentally. That would be my assumption, and that you can't have a guy just completely out of position all the time. How are you going to learn? You got to get reps. But that would be an assumption. And again, purely an assumption that I would be making there. I will throw one little nugget in here that I think is really interesting, and I can't get into super details. But I think Denard Wilson is going to be creative with his linebacking cores, both of them, inside and outside, with how they are deployed against the pass. I'll say that. I think it'll be interesting.
So it was something today that I saw was Arden Key was getting near the quarterback against John Ojukwu, who lines up on the right side. And typically that's where Harold Landry is typically lined up at. And because I kind of noticed, Harold Landry's pretty stagnant. He's on that one side throughout his entire NFL career. They don't move him around like other edges tend to get moved around. They keep them on one side. And I wondered, but Harold Landry's been absent. So one of my questions was going to be, are they moving Harold Landry on the other side sometimes? And then is he lined up over on the right side, lined up over on the left side? But it sounds like Arden Key yesterday may have got lined up on Latham, but today he was over there on OJ. And because we talked about it on Football and Other F Words, yesterday was our edge preview, and it was like, everybody's like, well, who is the one player that's going to take the 11.5 sacks? And we're like, well, of Danico Autry, and we're like, they're going to blitz more, so it's going to be a committee of people taking over the 11.5 sacks. It's not just one. Is that kind of where you're going with that? It's just like they're going to have maybe Jamal Adams on the outside on some plays as an edge rusher, or and stuff like that, or
So how about
Murray?
this?
Obviously, is a guy that we've kind of penciled in as a outside pass rushing edge player here and there, but obviously they're going to have to be creative, like you said. It just seems like maybe we're going to be a little bit less stagnant in that middle four.
Yes, I think you're right to say that, and I think you're right to talk about all the other things you're talking about. What I'm referring to specifically is all of those players doing pass coverage drills on their own over on the side. At one point, it was Weaver and Harrell and those players, and I'm assuming that would be Landry and Key would be in that group if Landry was out there, and they're doing very specific, like 5-yard short shuttle back pedals into coverage, right? So. But it's like a little drill that they're doing. Like, again, you're not supposed to video this stuff, but like there's like a W drill where they go back, forward, catch a pass and run. So it's clear that they are working on what other things can we do to create a more dynamic linebacking core. And I would say that from an edge and middle linebacker standpoint, that Denard Wilson is going to be creative with whether it's the blitz or the pass drops or the two at the same time. Like, hey, Jamal Adams is going to roll up and he's going to come off this side, but we're going to drop this guy into coverage over here. That's just disguising your blitz. So it's just
and the Ravens did really well when they played Miami and San Francisco back to back. The Ravens did that really well. And I think it was Seattle maybe was in between them, but those 3 games they showed different coverages out of the same look. They were dropping different people to take up passing lanes. Sometimes just having a bigger guy, a longer guy in the passing lane can help with other things. They may not be great, but they can help with other things.
Hypothetically, Zach, if your slot corner or your safety continually gets beat by a slot receiver on an in-breaking route over the middle, would you want to drop a 6'6", 250-pound, 260-pound defensive lineman outside linebacker into the passing lane? Maybe. Maybe. That might be something you want to do. I think it's also I think Jalen Harrell is a guy they like. That would be.
Hey, I am not surprised. I've been on the Jalen Harrell train for a little bit. He was one of the highest Titans fit rating players at the edge group, so I'm happy. I heard that yesterday's through some Titans media sparrows. I heard that yesterday's performance may have been a little overblown on social media. It was good, but not as good as what it was being said. But today he also, I think, I just pulled it up here because Tehran always does really good reports. And a strong bull rush by Jalen Harrell, which bull rush is not really what he's known for, versus John Ojukwu to force a quick throw from Levis. So I do think that, I think that we do need to temper expectations for Jalen Harrell. Yes. Don't overblow it like Caleb Murphy. But if he becomes your 4th best pass rusher, that is a good thing. Because sometimes your 4th best pass rusher, because how Harold Landry plays a lot of snaps, doesn't see the field a lot, but as long as he's the 4th best, I think that's better than Tommy Rush or better than Caleb Murphy.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's what they're shooting for. That would be my guess. All right, Levis and the offensive line. You want to switch sides? You want to talk special teams? Sure. Brian Stonehouse not on the PUP list. You got NPF on the PUP list because he cleaned out a knee. He had a shoulder issue last year. Colton Dowell, of course, on the non-active PUP list. So only 2 players. Brian Callahan said on Tuesday this team is very, very healthy. Since then, we can get to the injuries as well. Chidobe Awuzie has a calf. Landry with the illness, of course. Being open about injuries, strange. Interesting strategy by
And,
the
and
coach.
starting off the top with
Yeah.
it, not having to be asked about it, I think is really great.
Just
And actually
get it out of the way.
apologizing that he wasn't there yesterday to talk about Harold Landry and Daniel Brunskill. But I do think that it's interesting that I think he just knows he's going to get asked at this point. So why not just tell people?
I'm also really curious over the next, let's say, 3 seasons to see how he himself evolves in all of this, because
Yeah.
he still hadn't even coached a game yet. So I think it's
Right.
going to be interesting to see his own personal strategies through all of this. Again, Stonehouse was kind of taking it easy. They were not traveling very far. From what I understand, is that when he's not, because what they did is what Rand and Brian said in the Tuesday press conference was they wanted to get Stonehouse. The reason he's active is because they want to get him comfortable with the pressure coming at him, because that's obviously like the PTSD of
Right.
punting, right? so like they wanted to get him comfortable. So I think he was sort of playing like 3/4 speed, and they were going like 42 to 47 yards. So they clearly were not Stonehouse bombs. But I think that's because
a lot longer than really what I thought that he would be able to punt them comfortably. Like, because I mean, it's also like just getting comfortable, not just with pressure, but actually kicking again and trying to be a little pinpoint stuff. So I was kind of surprised.
I would
surprised here
assume
that he's even going that far.
I would assume that he's been kicking for a long time, but I think he clearly was intentionally holding back. Like, again, going 3/4, let's say 3/4 speed is what I would say. Because I think some folks saw him on a practice field on it by himself, kicking the ball much further. So I think I think it's more about just acclimation, which is good news. I think the punt returner job is the guys that you expect it to be. That job, I think, is going to be the same folks that you expect. And it honestly could be whoever does that could be the guy who wins the last receiver job as well, because we've talked about Phillips versus Jackson all summer, and that's going to be a big part of this as well. So you want to go Levis and offensive line here?
Yeah, I mean, I think the offensive line, it's interesting, but not surprising that they kept the same starting 5 that we saw at pajama practice, which is from left to right: J.C. Latham, Peter Skoronski, Lloyd Cushenberry, Sadiq Charles, and OJ, John Ojukwu. And I thought it was interesting that they've kept those same 5. Obviously, NPF still has a shot to take over the right tackle, but it seems pretty clear that first off, the main takeaway should be those that thought that Jerron Christian's job was going to be the right tackle job. He's not even cracking the second team on the right side. I'm assuming he must be over on the left side at left tackle, which is what we thought.
He had a bunch of bad reps. He did not have a good practice on Tuesday or on Wednesday either.
Well, there you go. I'm not surprised with that either. But there's a lot of people who thought that, well, Jerron Christian signing means they don't like any of the right tackles. Well, he's not even cracking the second team right tackle spot, because then it went Radens and Watson at right guard and right tackle. And then Brunskill, even with Corey Levin signed today, Brunskill was the backup, the second team center from what I've heard. So in that instance, again, it's the same usual suspects, the same names that we've seen pop up over and over. It will be real interesting to see. So, like, to me, the right tackle conversation now turns into, and the right guard conversation seems pretty cemented. It's Sadiq Charles if he's healthy. What the conversation turns into for me is like, how quick does NPF earn his job? Is he automatically cemented in? Is he eased in? Is it a equal split? That to me is now the conversation. It's between Ojukwu and NPF. Duncan's not even a factor. We haven't even mentioned Jalen Duncan, who does not sound long for this team, which
I think he was
kind of alluded to as a cut candidate anyway.
I could have sworn Duncan was out there in the second team on day one. I'm pretty sure.
Maybe he was on the left side.
I think he might have been the left side, but he was definitely in the second team. What's interesting is I think you're right. It's MPF versus Ojukwu, and I would my instincts say NPF 70-30 over Ojukwu has a lead on the job, is what I would say. If MPF can't stay healthy, can't win the job, can't hold up, shows that he's not ready, Ojukwu could take it from him. But I think it's probably NPS to lose, if that makes sense. And again, that's not based on anything on the field because we haven't seen him on the field. But he also was
it's like written in half pencil, half pen for NPF.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Levis is locked in, of course. And I thought a couple of interesting questions of Callahan before practice started, which was just about sort of how can you tell, if he's worked on the big things that Brian Callahan values, which in my mind is processing and accuracy. Those are the two things he's mentioned a lot. I posted some stuff on YouTube that he said from his press conference. It's about sort of this, you do all the work you can to develop, and then you have to flip a switch and turn into getting ready for games. And there's a different practice sort of routine in training camp than, working on your footwork or whatever. And I would say he looks like he's been very connected to his teammates all offseason. We know how well documented that is with all the trips and the Cabo and et cetera. And I think he looked pretty sharp on Wednesday. A lot of quick short passing and a lot of, Tyler Boyd, DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley as expected, and a lot of accurate footballs from Will Levis. I don't think they pushed very much. I don't think we saw them really try a bunch of stuff, but I think he looked pretty locked in.
He said it's very purposeful not to have a lot of deep routes and to go deep as a way of protecting, your players from possible injury and having them not overwork themselves. Because if you remember, Traylon Burks' injury last year was on a deep route that he went full speed on, and that injury in the preseason against the Vikings in those joint practices. So it makes sense.
Julio Jones too.
Julio Jones, I guess too. But it makes sense as to why everything is very purposeful, with an emphasis on staying healthy this offseason, which I find very interesting. Is like, obviously the Tennessee Titans and Mike Vrabel always wanted to stay healthy, but there didn't seem much purposeful intent in the way they conducted practice. They kept conducting practice the same. And while this is already a stark difference, I do think that there is something to taking in the information and the data and taking in outside point of views from Zach Woodfin and applying those to how you conduct practice. And it's really more beneficial for Will Levis anyway, not just health-wise, but what have we talked about all offseason that he needs to work on? It's the short and intermediate passing. The deep passing's fine. So it's just short intermediate stuff to help elevate his game to the next level. So it's not only purposeful in the way that it protects the wide receivers and the corners that have to cover those wide receivers down the field, but it's purposeful in a way that it's to actually progress Will Levis. I just find it very not interesting in the differences between the two coaching staffs, but I find it more interesting in seeing the process of a different coach that we don't know anything about.
Right.
Like, it's insight into Brian Callahan more than it is insight into, well, Brian Callahan is obviously better than Mike Vrabel, which some people may turn that into. I'm not saying that.
Sure.
I'm just saying I think it's we talk about the process and insight. That's good process and insight into how Brian Callahan views things.
And one of the things I noticed also from their very first 7-on-7 drill on Wednesday was, and maybe it was actually not even 7-on-7, maybe it was just 7 on air, was the tempo of getting to the line of scrimmage. Like, they were working very specifically and very obviously on Levis, break the huddle, receivers, get to your spot real fast. And it's just, they were getting set very fast. So if that's just something they're working on, that could be what that is. Is that just what we're going to see from this unit compared to years past? Maybe. But that's something that I noticed as well. They would get from huddle to line of scrimmage very quickly as a group of tight ends, running backs, quarterbacks, receivers. There were no linemen or defense out there, but it was just they were clearly something they were doing specifically. Donnie says, have the Titans changed the rules for what you can share about practice nowadays compared to prior years? So there's one slight rule change, and that was you could live tweet during the recording sessions. So I think there were 12 sessions of practice. You can only record like stretching, which is 0, and then like individual, which is like drills 1 and 2. I think special teams might have been 1. And that's all you can video. Then you can report on other stuff you see, but you have to wait till after practice to send it out. That will be different because I think the rest of the practices are open to the fans.
There's like the next 7 practices are all open.
So all the open practices, we will be able to sort of live tweet as we go, but that's because you can come and as a fan and show up and watch everything you want to. So I think Callahan being open about injuries is also, that's something we've already touched on. I think it's a little bit more pragmatic and less like Soviet Union versus United States hockey 1980. But like, I don't know if it makes a huge difference in our coverage, to be honest with you. The rules always felt kind of silly, and so they've been tweaked and they've been loosened, I guess you could say. And Callahan's willing to speak more about some stuff, but again, we haven't gotten to a game yet, so we don't know what he's going to be like there. But I think Levis has done what he's supposed to do in the first couple of days. We'll see how they stretch the field. Now they stretch him out. Now they stretch the playbook. I thought the playbook looked pretty good schematically. They were getting guys open. Defense, I thought we're
still a little bit of ways the way he discussed about from full pads too. Like that's the other thing is.
I think it's Tuesday. I think is when they're.
Is it Tuesday? He made it sound like he didn't say when it was, but he made it sound like it was going to be a while. So
yeah, I think Tuesday. I think we've got one more on Saturday. They're off on Sunday. I think there's a practice Monday, and then I think full pads Tuesday. I believe is what's going to happen. Gotcha. But don't quote me on that. So I'm trying to think of anything else that gets you going here, man. DeAndre Hopkins, happiest he's ever been in his entire life.
Not surprised. I think it seems like him and Rand just have a really damn good relationship. And I think he likes it here and everything. So he loves Nashville as well. So I think that kind of plays into it. So I'm not too surprised that, and especially because you were in Houston as well. I mean, that's kind of boring.
Let's say let me ask
Bill O'Brien as your head coach. Oh.
Yeah, well, that's boring. I agree with that. He's the most Boston College head coach of all time. Like Bill O'Brien belongs as a Boston College head football coach. Let me ask you a question real fast because this was a topic of discussion on the sidelines. DeAndre Hopkins, let's say he goes a regular, normal DeAndre Hopkins year, not something special, not something bad, just a regular
like last year.
And I'd say like let's even go back a slight step because Ridley's going to get more targets and Tyler Boyd's going to get some targets and the running backs, etc. Whatever. Let's say he's at 65 for 900. I don't know, solid, productive, valuable, everything you expect DeAndre Hopkins to be. What do you do with him at the end of the year? Because that was part of the press conference with Rand that he's already working on contracts with folks, and he was asked specifically if DeAndre Hopkins was on that list. And my favorite answer from Rand Carthon in the history of his career as the general manager was he stops, he goes, DeAndre is a player on the team. And to me, that's him saying that we've absolutely had conversations
about it.
We've absolutely had conversations. Rand says he's very direct. DeAndre says he's very direct. There's no way that two very direct people who have a good relationship and are worried about the future have not had these conversations. So my question is, what does that look like to you? Is it let him walk? Is it 2 years? Is it overpay? What in your mind is the right strategy with DeAndre Hopkins' future?
Well, I'll never be in favor of an overpay. But I mean, I do think there's a limit to what you can do. I guess this is where I kind of landed on. We hadn't talked about it on Football and Other Efforts. Now, radio shows have been going crazy about this topic for 3 weeks. It feels like we hadn't talked about it on Football and Other Efforts either. I've just kind of like avoided it because I'm just like, well, I'm very apathetic about it. And when I'm apathetic about something, I don't really want to talk about it.
Sorry.
So no, what I'm saying is Mike's stance was, let's wait and see. Stoney's like, let's go ahead and do it pretty much. I mean, it wasn't as firm as that, but he's all for pro extension. Let's extend him. For me, I was like, if it came down to it, I'm more of a wait and see kind of guy, because if you're a 6-win team again, I would just rather draft Luther Burden or the kid from Arizona, in that top area spot, because you were so close to getting Malik Neighbors, and
Luther Burden. Luther Burden is so much better than Malik Neighbors. I'm just going to tell you right now.
Right. I mean, I'm with you. I'm just saying that you're so close to getting a really good talent.
Yeah.
And I think we got to get younger around Will Levis. And really, my other point is like, I'm tired of the Tennessee Titans thinking we've spent money on free agency. Let's wait until the 6th round or 4th round to draft a wide receiver. No, it is time for them, even if they extend DeAndre Hopkins, it is time for them to get a 1st-round wide receiver. If they're drafting really high, obviously. It is time for them to get Luther Burden. Just bite the bullet, get Luther Burden, worry about the rest later. It's time to find someone to grow with Will Levis because at the end of the day, he's going to be 33 next year. Calvin Ridley is going to be over 30. Tyler Boyd is going to be a free agent. And it's time to find young studs that we know are studs or we know have the best shot at being studs. Like Jaquan Jackson could turn into a stud, but he doesn't have the best shot at it.
Are you telling me 20 million? Like 2 years, 40 million? Like,
I mean, 2 years, 20 million. Like, if you wanted to pay him $10 million a year, he's not a $20 million a year wide receiver. I mean, let's be honest.
That's what I think.
What his contract was, what was that? 2 year? I think he's getting paid 2 years.
I think he's getting 14
million or something.
I think he's getting 14.
But what was the actual contract terms when he initially signed it?
2 for 27, maybe. Does that sound right?
It's pretty.
It feels close. The question is is this? There was talk on the sideline like this guy's going to expect no, he's not a top flight number 1.
26.
That's pretty close.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with 2 year 30. I'm okay with 2 year 36, like $18 million a year, whatever.
Okay.
I don't think that he's a $20 million a year wide receiver. Am I going to be upset that they did a $20 million a year wide receiver and tacked on void years? No, it's very apathetic, and it's with the way that the cap's going up and all this stuff. It's just like it has to get to a certain point. Like if you paid him like $25 million a year, I think that's when I'm like, okay, that's extremely an overpay. There isn't a point to it. It's just he's going to age well, but you never know when that aging comes for you. Like Danico Autry aged really well. Tom Brady aged really well. Jerry Hughes has aged really well. There's many examples across the NFL. It's just that the Tennessee Titans have to draft a wide receiver. I don't care what happens.
Duly noted.
Let's be honest. Let's be realistic. Are we really counting on Treylon Burks to really turn it around? Are we really expecting, DeAndre Hopkins not to see a little bit of a decline as he gets older? Are we really expecting Tyler Boyd to get an extension? Are we really expecting Jaquan Jackson to be the next great Deshaun Jackson slot wide receiver? No. Let's live in reality and go ahead and just put it in erasable, dry erase marker right now if you want to, but it's in marker. The Tennessee Titans need a wide receiver next year because when's the last time they haven't needed a wide receiver in the draft?
This year probably is the only time.
They needed one in the draft this year.
That's true.
Because
here's
they
what I
didn't
would
have
say.
Tyler Boyd, and they still needed one.
Here's what I would say is possible and would be kind of ideal, which is Calvin Ridley is your 1, Luther Burden is your 2, Trey Burks is your 3, Jaquan Jackson is your 4 in your slot. That I think would be a very good development for the team, both in the short term and the long term.
It's possible, just highly improbable. I feel like at this point,
I think
it's like it's kind of like what we always say. We said about a bunch of players for Tennessee Titans. Got to see it on the field.
Yep.
If you want to prove me wrong, and I'll be happy. Like if Treylon Burks can prove me wrong and show that Tennessee Titans don't need a wide receiver in the draft next year, I'm fucking ecstatic.
Yeah.
They'll need one in the following year unless he's going to be able to get an extension. But I'll be fucking ecstatic. And if Jaquan Jackson proves me wrong, I'm ecstatic. I just don't think that that's logically possible.
Glory Day says, do we need to see do you see Nuke move into the slot after this year to maybe have a Larry Fitzgerald renaissance? Here's what I would say to your point, Zach, about him aging very well. This is a man who is incredibly particular and very specific about everything he does with his body and how he takes care of himself. He is in really, really good shape right now. Day 2 of the camp, he was in very good shape. I think he is going to age very well and will extend his career because he's been like that his entire career. And so I don't think he needs to move into the slot to sort of manage his diminishing skill set really at any point. Like I think he can play out there for a couple more years, barring a major injury. And if he can play for a couple more years, then is he worth the 15, 16, 18, $20 million? Maybe he is. Maybe he's still that good for 2 more years. But to your point, You just don't know when that drop off comes. So I think, look, here's my take. Go ahead.
Well, I want to stick on that for a second because I want to talk about Larry Fitzgerald, the slot renaissance or whatever. So back in, he started seeing his most slot snaps when he really got into like the 74% range, which was 2018. So that last 3 years, he really went to a slot year. 2020, 2019, 2018. Those years, he was 35, 36, 37. So we're still a little bit of ways from the DeAndre Hopkins, Larry Renaissance have to switch because those prior years where he was 33. So DeAndre Hopkins is 32. Then if you signed him, he'd be 33 and 34. So this year would have been 32, 1,215 yards, 9 touchdowns. 2016, 1,023 yards, 6 touchdowns. And when he was 34, 1,156 yards and 6 touchdowns. Do I expect that yardage total? Possibly not. But this team is going to pass more, and I do think we have to kind of adjust our minds a little bit to that. But
neither player was a speed. Neither player was a speed guy, and so
to me, Larry Fitzgerald is a great way to look at it. If DeAndre Hopkins wanted to play till he's 37, but we're still a little bit far away before he goes into the big slot role that Larry Fitzgerald had to be.
I also think Larry Fitz is just built more like a tight end. Like DeAndre Hopkins is not a thick guy. He's actually fairly thin.
Yeah, he's not thick.
He's fairly thin. So I think really exciting stuff for the overall first week of press conferences and conversations and sort of two practices. I think by and large, I think the quarterback and the receivers look like they're on the same page. I think the offensive line looks more stable. I think there are some major questions at edge rusher and linebacker. I think there's still some rotational stuff to figure out in certain situational things, whether it's tight end or safety, let's say hypothetically. I think Ryan Stonehouse being not listed on any list of any kind is a really positive and good development. Brian Callahan being both nervous and excited about kickoffs makes me both nervous and excited about kickoffs, which I think is going to be very interesting. And I just think the whole organization is a little bit more stable and a little bit more aligned. I don't know if that means anything. I think it still could be a 6-win team. I don't know. And we're not going to –
it quite possibly could.
We're not going to put our time capsule stamp on this until the very last minute when we can make our final predictions weeks and weeks and weeks from now. So other than that, Sinkers, Beverages, and the Kingston Group, make sure you check that out. You got stackingtheinbox.com. You got Lower Broad Hockey for you Preds fans, both on Substack. Go check both of them out. Great communities, chat rooms, and content for you subscribers out there. Please check out the show notes if you're listening on the podcast or on YouTube. There's a link in there to answer some questions so that we can better help serve you guys better products and better content in a better way, better time. How you guys consume and interact with us is very, very important to us. So we just want to get to know you guys a little bit better. It takes like 5 minutes. If you could do it for us, it's a huge help, and we really, really would appreciate it. So make sure you click on that link. Everything's private. It's just for us to sort of do a better job for you guys. So make sure you check that out. It'll be all over the socials. You see it floating around as well. Bluegrass Beverages, sponsor of Football and Other F Words. Make sure you check that out. And yes, Stoney, put that sucker out on Twitter, big guy. Yes, absolutely. Share it all over the place. Instagram stories as well. If you guys want to share it to all the other folks who listen, that'd be great. So thank you for everybody that's doing that, and for Stoney for helping out. For Zach, have a great weekend, everybody. You guys be good. Thanks for listening. Go buy some booze at Sinkers. Go, use Kingston Group to help with your house. Other than that, I think we're good for the first week. Football is here, boys. We are off and running, and games are going to be happening much, much sooner than we think, and that is a great time of year to be. It's just great to be here. So, all right, for Zach, I'm Braden. Thank you all for listening. Have a great weekend, everybody. We will talk to you on Monday.